Hi, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of the Monthly Connection. Special in that it's one topic tonight, healing from pain, whether that's pain at the physical level or emotional or mental or spiritual. I'm going to share with you from personal experience, and we may well go over 2 hours tonight. I'm not quite sure how long this is going to take. For every monthly connection, I usually have about 22 to 27 pages of notes. Now that sounds like a lot, but it's printed in 18 fonts, double space, so I can read it without glasses. I don't usually read the notes, but I do need to follow them. But tonight we have 40. But we'll just see how it goes. We also, I normally start with evidence from the greater reality and from my readings that I've recently done, but I'm not going to do that this evening because that cuts too much into the time for this very important topic. And there's enough evidence from the spirit world in the story itself that y'all will not be able to doubt that the spirit world is guiding us all the time and that we are not alone and we don't have to struggle alone. If we have time at the end, I'll do Q&A about this specific topic, but again, I don't know. And it's really funny because usually my guides tell me it's going to take exactly this long, and they haven't told me, and I don't understand why, but that's okay. They say they're here now, and they just said, just keep going. So, okay, we will. But thanks to my team for the pregame show. Love my assistants. They're just friends and assistants, and what a lot of love we all share. And I know we can all feel your love. We felt the energy gathering this evening. Love these times, special times to get together with our Awake and Wake community. If you're not joining us live, if you're seeing this in the recording afterwards, no worries. The energy is the same. So I would like to just start just by sharing with you that we have finished the in-person portion of the Wolf's Message tour. Wow, with huge kudos to Bev Garlip because she did all the background work. Oops, God said not exactly all. It was definitely a team effort because everybody on my team had to have a hand in that. But she was the grand organizer and coordinator and logistics and everything. Bev, would you unmute yourself for just a second?
Sure.
And you just need to say hi and come on there because, yeah.
Hello, everyone. So glad you're here. And many of you were part of the tour and saw Suzanne in person. And it was just an incredible way to spread Wolf's message.
Yeah. Thank you, Bev. She just tallied up the numbers for us today. We actually showed the film in 25 times across the entire US, 25 in-person screenings, touching 4,500 people live. The greatest thrill for me was to feel that loving energy as everybody was present, to see the way the film affected people, and then to have people come up afterwards and share with us. So I know that Mike and Beth Passacarnis, Wolf's dad and stepmom, are watching this evening. So just thanking them again for allowing us to share their story. Thanking Jim Spruill and his team, our director, and for the beautiful job they did with this film. But it is still available on demand at wolfsmessage.com. It will be for a while. And I was just talking to our distributor about future plans for it. It is also available live streaming on Gaia TV. Speaking of Mike and Beth, uh, I've been asking for prayers pretty much monthly during the 2 year challenge that Beth has been facing with a very aggressive form of leukemia. And just in the last 4 days, uh, it has taken a big turn for the worse. And so she's having some treatment and is facing a really scary time. I just talked to her a little while ago, so a little bit subdued here this evening. But she has a 50-50 chance of the new therapy she's doing working. So we're all going to just aim for that higher 50% there. And I ask for all of you to send healing energy and hold that vision that the new therapy does, if not reverse the effects that she's feeling now, at least stop the progression of what's going on with her. And I'm really thrilled that tomorrow I get to see her in person. I'm going to travel down to Jacksonville and see her for the first time since we saw her at the premiere of Wolf's Message back in April. So, gonna be good to hug you both of you, Mike and Beth. I do want to tell you that Spirit really knows what we're going through. I was doing a reading, was it yesterday? I think it was just, if it wasn't yesterday, it was the day before. I'm in the middle of a reading. I knew my phone was on Do Not Disturb. I knew the ringer was off. And right in the middle, my phone rings. I was mortified, interrupting the connection. And I looked down and it's Mike Passacarnis. And I just quickly reached over and did that, send a message. Can I call you later? It has a button that you can do that. And I just thought, how did that happen? 1 minute later, I go back to the reading. The Spirit's still here. Hold the connection. Go back to the reading. And it rang again. And it was Mike. And so we were really wrapping up the reading, and I wrapped it up respectfully. And then I looked down at my phone and I was shocked. It was still on Do Not Disturb. And the ringer was absolutely off. So I knew I was meant to call Mike. I reached out, called him right away. He said, I didn't call you. I said, yes, you did. So Wolf called me on your behalf. And it was clear from the conversation that he needed grounding. He needed a good a dose of spiritual encouragement. And so as we hold Beth in our prayers, please hold Mike as well. All right. So, wow. So healing takes place at many levels, as I said, and sometimes our prayers aren't answered the way we want them to be, but boy, have I learned to trust the process, and I've really learned that healing takes place on many levels. So that's what tonight is going to be about. I don't know how many of you watched or attended the Forgotten Center workshop that I did exactly a month ago, October 4th. And it was all about how to deepen your connection with Spirit with a new focus on the soul's awareness center in the belly, which is called the hara. I'll briefly recap that in a few minutes, but that understanding that the hara is super important to our connection, something that I was not aware of until recently, came about as a result of some back pain that I started going through in July. It started out as simply muscle ache on both sides of my lumbar region, lower back, but then it progressed. So during the Forgotten Center workshop, I shared about that pain, and I shared a lot of synchronicities and signs and how paying attention to the pain led me to awareness of the hara and how important it was. So that I felt was the gift. But the morning that I gave that workshop, I was awakened at 4 in the morning by my guides, who gave me 9 pages of downloads about healing from pain. And I thought, I'm not going to have time to do this in this 6-hour online live workshop today. And they said at that time, this will bring everything that you're experiencing and will continue to experience over the next month into one cohesive form, and you'll give it in a special workshop. So this is tonight. So I give you that background so that you understand this, everything that I'm sharing with you this evening has been orchestrated by Spirit. All of the realizations that I've come to. Bev, can you turn off the chat, please? All of the realizations that I've come to are because I've learned to listen to Spirit and ask Spirit, and because I know we all have a direct relationship with our guides and our loved ones across the veil, and we can learn from them. So this is going to be my story, my specific issue that I am healing from. But the reason I'm okay with sharing it with all of you is because I see the universal lessons in this for all of us. Because there's not one of us that doesn't deal with pain. And I talked to Beth, like I said, just a little while ago, Beth Passacarnis, and I said, as I went over my notes for today, my issue seems so trivial compared to what she has been through and what she's going through. And we all know it's no comparison. We're not here to compare one person's illness or challenge with another. And yet this is so fleeting, and it wasn't life-threatening. And so I hold that in awareness as I share this with you this evening, and I recognize that pain is pain in the sense that it has lessons for all of us. It has purpose for all of us, our own pain, no matter what level it is, mental, emotional, spiritual, or physical. And the guides, they're guiding me already here. They're saying what we want you to understand is none of those happens in isolation. And that's the awareness that they gave me throughout this. I knew that this was not just a physical problem with the back pain. I knew it had a deeper origins, deeper roots. And I'm checking now, and they say, yes, I can say that there is not a physical ailment that does not have some kind of root, unless it's like a broken bone that happened when you fell off a curb, but there's an illness. Generally, you will find something in the area of the illness that needs attention. There we go. That needs attention. Okay. So, recapping the forgotten center and why the hara is important. I knew, because I know that our pain starts, it has roots in the area in which it originates. I knew that with back pain and some abdominal issues I had going on, there was something going on in that area with me. And that's what led me to understand the importance of focusing not just on the head, not just on the heart, but also on the hara. These are three centers of awareness that the soul, where the soul gathers the life force and amplifies it and uses it to solidify and deepen our connection with spirit. If we're not aware of the hara as an important center of soul awareness, we are not grounding our connection with spirit. We can easily float away if we're only in the head. We can become over emotional if we're only in the heart. We can wobble and waver in our connection with spirit if we're only in the head and the heart, which is the way I've been for all of my work as a medium. Very happy with my connection with spirit, and yet it has never been totally dependable. It wavers. Once I started focusing on the hara, holding awareness there, anchoring awareness of the soul into the earth, raising that energy up to the head and the heart, and then aligning the three centers with the seven chakras. Notice I just said hold, anchor, raise, and align, the hara method. Once I started doing that, that was the game changer. That's why I did a whole all-day workshop about it. So that's a real quick recap in there. But when you focus on the hara and align it with the other centers, and then work it in with the seven chakras, your connection is strong, clear, grounded, and most important, you have a sense of trust in what you're sensing. You can truly tell the difference between, is this my imagination versus I know what spirit is trying to tell me. So that's the hara in a nutshell. As you might have heard Stephanie say before we started, I'm doing a special 1-hour event with the Shift Network, November 15th. You can go to my website right under the banner and click on that. It's free. Sign up for that 1-hour event. Like the Shift Network always does, that's an introduction to a 7-module course I'll be doing in December. But whether or not you sign up for the course, that event guides you through the hara method. So I hope you'll enjoy that. And also in December, I'm going to do a live podcast. Christy, I'm not sure, I can't remember which Sunday we said we were going to do that, but I'm going to guide you all through the hara method combined with my bless me method, so we can all connect with a loved one or guide across the veil and show you how easy it is to combine the two. Do you remember which date we said? Well, if you sign up to be notified of my podcast, which you can do by going to my website, you'll know, and we'll also put it in an upcoming newsletter. So there's the hara. So the issue with my back became the greatest physical challenge I've had in my 64 years on this earth, with pain at a level I had never experienced. But more than that, the duration of it, ongoing. And so I learned very much to empathize with people who have chronic pain. It truly gave me an understanding of what people go through and how exhausting it is to be in pain, because the body is always fighting it. They said, don't, you guys say, don't say fighting. The body is dealing with it and expending a lot of energy to deal with the pain. It takes your focus away from other things. So great empathy for those going through that. In the past, any aches and pains I had would clear up in less than a week, but this was daily struggling with what turned out to be a herniated disc pressing on the sciatica nerve. So anybody who's had sciatica will know what that is like. I've had a little bit of pain in the sciatic area in the past, but this was a full-blown attack on the sciatic nerve, uh, causing me to deal with that for 2 solid months, every day pain, modifying the way I moved through life, modifying my daily habits, modifying my connection with spirit, because I did learn when you are in ongoing pain, it is nigh unto impossible to connect. But luckily, with the sciatic pain, for me, it only came when I did certain movements after I was able to sit for a while. There were the first couple weeks I couldn't sit to meditate or connect at all. I had to lie down, and even then it was hard to get in a comfortable position. But what I've learned so clearly over the past 15, 16 years of working with spirit is that our challenges are our greatest opportunities. They really are an invitation to us to go deeper into looking at our human story versus our soul, which is already whole and complete, and find alignment. So knowing that, I did not ever, I'm checking, I did not ever lose hope through this. I know that this too shall pass is a very true statement. Sometimes people die from their illnesses and they say, well, that didn't pass, but life is eternal. But what goes up does go down, and vice versa is true. So I knew that things go in cycles. And just like I knew that I couldn't connect when I was in pain, I would be able to connect at some point. So I just flowed. I did my best to flow. And I hope to encourage all of you who are new on this path that you really can get to that point. Because if this had happened to me years ago, oh, I know exactly what would have happened, and you'll find out later. I would have remained in pain because I wouldn't have noticed the signs along the way and helped to heal it with a lot of help from other people. But it's who I'll mention throughout the evening. But it's very interesting that I had a reading in June with a wonderful medium and psychic named Lisa Campion. I've had her on my podcast recently. And she said, Suzanne, from solstice to solstice, this past June to December, you are going to be shedding layers of old stuff. You're going to be going to a new level, but it's not without some pain. And I got all excited because none of the back issues had started yet. And I said, oh, that's great, a new level. I love that. And I just figured they meant, oh, there's always a little emotional pain as we shed layers of stuff. But I had no idea they meant physical in this case, and a bit of mental for sure. So I want to tell you all that where I am now versus a month ago, I had an epidural shot the night before that October 4th workshop, so I was feeling okay that morning, but it did all come back. But for the past 10 days, almost completely pain-free. Absolute healing has happened. I'm walking around in a state of utter gratitude. Everything that used to bring on the pain, I'm acknowledging it out loud. I can get out of bed and I just say, thank you, thank you, thank you. I go to put my socks on and it doesn't hurt. And I just say, thank you for this. Thank you, Spirit. Gratitude is a wonderful way to align with your soul. But more than that, because of what I have shed emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, which I'll get to this evening, just like Lisa Campion saw in my field, my mediumship has gone to another level. I don't know if you watched live Q&A session that I did on the podcast with Christy as my co-host. Sunday, usually I'll listen to Sanaya and get the answers. Sunday, I just channeled the answers, just boom, 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 with eyes open. And even more thrilling. So I just want to show you all that not only physical healing takes place, but as we clear out the gunk that's blocking our life force, we do deepen that connection. I did a reading just yesterday and brought through a man I brought through in spirit years ago. His daughter wanted to hear from him again. And so I knew we would have a good connection. Right away, he pulled me over in my system where I would feel a father. And he said, "Really, do we have to do this? Why don't I just step right in?" I looked forward at her on the screen. I could feel him merge with me, and I channeled him directly speaking to her. It was a phenomenal experience, and she started crying and said, "Those are his words. Those are what he called me." And it was with total ease and trust. So that's a combination of the hara method, using the hara, applying everything that I taught last month, and also what's been healed. So I hope that gives all of you who are trying to deepen your connection with spirit hope. And now we better get on to show you how I got to that point, right? So let's go back a couple months when I just had the muscle pain. The sciatica hadn't yet kicked in. I started out with the normal treatment, right? Massage, NSAIDs, nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory, Motrin or ibuprofen, and some Tylenol. And uh, what I noticed was very strange was nothing was working. And I thought that was unusual because I've had a little muscle aches in the back. You take a couple of Motrin, it goes away, get a massage, you're fine. But nothing was working for the 2 weeks. So right away, I'm seeing that there might be something deeper going on here. So August 18th, I remember the date because I started counting the weeks after this happened and saying, why is this still happening to me? I was lying in bed first thing in the morning. I was going to get up, but the blanket that had been laying on top of the bed had fallen off. So I leaned way over. It's a very high bed, twisting to pick up the blanket, and bam, that's when the disc herniated. And this was proven by an MRI. You could see the disc pushing against the nerve, pushing it out and bending it. But it required a trip to the ER. I remember thinking on the way there, they might have to bring a gurney out. I don't know how I'm going to get out of this car, but somehow I was able to limp, gasping to the table. Luckily, that let me in right away because it was agonizing pain. And the nurse said, "We're going to keep you here until we get your pain down from a 9 on a pain scale of 0 to 10 to a 5. And 4 or 5 hours later, it was still over 5. And they just gave me 2 shots of Toradol, which is like it's a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory that does not affect your head. I told them I didn't want opioids because I'm very sensitive, but it didn't really cut it a whole lot. But the reason I bring this up is 2 things. The nurse said, "Oh, I've had this before. You're in for a long struggle." And that was my first, isn't that interesting moment. You can buy into that. Somebody tells you that and gives you a belief. Now, is that going to become my belief system? Or can you just trust that each person's journey is going to be different? But I really couldn't accept that this was going to be around for months. I couldn't even imagine that. So that was one thing. And the other thing was how my body reacted to the pain. Any of you who are nurses or doctors or others who are familiar with the body's fight or flight syndrome, it was on full alert. I remember lying there on the table as the doctor and nurse are trying to talk to me, and my teeth were chattering and my knees were knocking. I had to have my knees bent so I could be comfortable, but they were banging together and I couldn't stop. My entire body shaking, and Ty's standing over me, looking at me, like, why is she shaking so much? And they said it's just the body's nervous system reacting to the pain. But that went on and on and on. So it was a real shock to me mentally after we got back to the bus. We had to move on. I had an actual screening of Wolf's Message and we had to get to the next city. And so I was flat out on the bus as we traveled to the next spot. And at the end of the day, we went to a campground. I was able to get up off the couch, and usually while Ty parks the bus, I move the car and out of the way. We tow a car behind the bus, and I was stunned that I could not put my foot on the pedal, and I could not sit in the seat of the car without pain. I said, "Kai, I can't drive the car." So that was the start, August 18th, of the I can't do this thing. The feeling of helplessness that I couldn't drive, and then I couldn't sit down to eat. So for 10 days, I couldn't sit at all, and I couldn't drive. So very helpless. But I do recall just flowing. That's been such a help on the spiritual path to just observe what's happening. I never asked, why is this happening? It is. It's when we argue with reality, when we resist what's happening, that we really suffer. So I'm very grateful that at least this came along when I knew that much. So the acceptance versus resistance, but it was still, oh my gosh, I I can't believe I can't sit. I can't believe I can't do this. And so there were many things that were very painful, but happily there were moments in between. If I would stand, I could stand and eat without pain, but that kind of thing. So I would say 98% of the time, at the worst of it, I was able to maintain an isn't this interesting attitude. So put that in your toolkit. If you're a note taker, make sure you write down, isn't that interesting, for whatever you're going through. And also then the second key point for all of us is maintaining and shifting to that, no, shifting to and maintaining the observer's perspective. That's a neutral perspective when you can, like Bev and I used to talk about sitting on the balcony and with Lynette, our souls are just watching. Look, they're going through a lot of pain now, but they're not losing it. Oh, that's good. And just being able to observe what's going on. And when you can observe your pain, it lessens. Okay. So as word got out here and there that I was going through the sciatica issue, I was just blown away by offers from members of our Awake and Wake community. And I knew that would happen. I remember at one point I said, I put it out somewhere. And I wrote to Patty Hart, hi Patty, who screens my emails. I said, Patty, watch out. You're going to get all kinds of emails with people who know how to deal with back issues. And in fact, she did. And I just love that, welcomed it. It was really beautiful. But my wonderful friend Lynette reached out and put me in touch with Hannah Hansen. I talked about her in the Forgotten Center workshop. She was the first person to give me hands-on healing after the sciatica attack 10 days after it happened. We met up. She came to my bus. It was a beautiful synchronicity that she's in Arizona. I was in Oregon, but she happened to be visiting in Idaho, and our paths were crossing at the exact same time. It was phenomenal. She came and did a healing, and I thought, oh, could I possibly be healed completely? And that was the day I was able to sit down to eat for the first time in 10 days. There was zero doubt in my mind that her treatment had that effect, but it didn't last. So I'm taking note that, okay, could there be something more at work here? Still thinking about the mind, body, spirit connection. So, I was healed of that, but why not healed completely? And of note, as I mentioned in the Forgotten Center workshop, Hannah commented that as a hands-on healer, she sees so many people that have issues in that area of the hara, the center of our soul awareness. Digestive issues, right? Back issues, very common. Why? Because at the deepest level, many of us have issues with relationships, which would be the second chakra, directly working with that hara area, and the first chakra, issues of safety and security, not feeling safe, not feeling secure in this world and in your body. I just heard ding, ding, ding. So a bunch of you that are new to this right now are saying, sorry, I just looked down, check a setting there, are saying, oh my gosh, could this be more than just this going on in my gut? Most likely, yes. So I hope that as we go along tonight, you'll hear more things that just snag your attention. The guides just said, yes, you are correct. We never did an invocation. We always start that way. So they also say, better late than never. Let's do that because you'll see why. It helps us set the intention that you will hear exactly what you need and to feel totally included in this. Alrighty, so let's just close our eyes for a moment and recenter, come together as a group. Breathe in very slowly through the nose. Taking that breath all the way down to the hara. And now as you exhale, very slowly release any tension. Move your shoulders just a little bit, relax fully, and settle in. Move your awareness to the heart. That's the emotional core of you. Let's turn up our light from there. Fill all of space in all directions from your heart and know that in doing so, you've just connected with everybody else who's connected with this session tonight. In awareness that we make up one beautiful community of awakening souls, awakening humans. The soul is already awake, the guides remind us. May each of us hear exactly what we need to hear this evening. As Spirit guides these words, may we feel connected to the whole. May healing take place on some level by grace, simply by having answered the call to be here this evening. And may our presence here help us to turn up our lights so that we radiate healing energy out to the world in return. And so it is. Okay, beautiful. Thank you for that. All righty. So now I'm able to sit after 10 days of the pain, but it's still pretty bad in many, many situations throughout the day. And to that point, every medical person that I saw said, have you been doing a lot of sitting lately? And I said, yeah, 10,000 miles on our documentary tour in our RV. Come to find out the seat was broken. It was in a position that wouldn't sit right. I came to learn that it's not just so much that you're sitting a lot, that definitely puts pressure on the discs, but how you're sitting. So I've learned to adjust that. But Ty and I decided we'd had enough of the road tour and we needed to simplify our life. So being willing to change what isn't working for you is another key to healing. And so we actually have the bus up for sale. It's across the country. We sent it away. It is completely out of our life. And I completed the tour by flying to the last 3 spots and doing the final 2 online to honor those who wanted to see that with me. So simplifying our life, listening and adapting, that was key. So I got back home to Idaho and from the part 2 of the tour, and a friend said, you might want to check out the work of Dr. John Sarno. I believe he's passed. I'm not sure, but his most of his work was back in the late pretty sure he's passed, yeah, the late 70s. And he gave a name to a syndrome that he called tension myosovial syndrome. Basically says the brain creates all pain signals, and that when you're experiencing pain, usually in the back, it comes from suppressed rage. When I read that from this friend, I said, no, I don't have rage. And I got quite a bit defensive and wrote back in an email. And many of you who follow my work know that I try not to get defensive, but I felt a little defensiveness and shame. What if this is all in my head, completely in my head? I need to tell you that at this point, I had already had an MRI. I saw the disc pressing on the nerve. But what was really unusual is the doctor's notes, the radiologist's notes said that 64% of people my age who might have an MRI have a possibility of having that issue and don't have pain with it. So in other words, you could have a disc pressing on that nerve and not have pain. I read that and said, how is that possible? And why do I have pain? So here's this friend sends me a word about you need to check out this doctor's work. And he says, it's all in your head. Ooh. And I wrote back, I said, thank you very much, but I've been working on my issues. I've really learned to feel my emotions. And I have, because I know, here's another teaching point, that when we don't feel our emotions fully, we don't. I just heard Lauren Hart giggle. So, Patty, you're not muted. That's her daughter's text tone. So, uh, I lost my train of thought there. Thank you, Lauren. I put down my friend's email. I went back to reading this book about a woman who was very dysfunctional. I thought that was kind of ironic that as he's talking about us suppressing our emotions, I'm reading about a book about a woman who has to go to 12-step programs because she has so many issues. And I thought, is this a joke from Spirit? How many issues have I not dealt with yet? So at that point, Ty said, do you mind if I turn the air conditioner on in the room? I get really chilly and we like to sleep cold, but if he turns it on before we put the covers over, I tend to get a little irritable because I get so cold. And I said, no, go ahead and turn it on. Well, I started to get freezing, but I didn't say anything. Then I got a little angry because I was freezing. And I got up to go to the bathroom one last time before going to bed. I'd had a pretty good day with the pain, and wham! The worst pain all day, right after the friend says it's all in your head. Suddenly, I made the connection between I'm angry at Ty, I'm clenching, but my body is also tense because I'm so cold. So I'm thinking, is there a mind and body connection here? So I wrote back to my friend the next day and I said, I'm sorry about that. I'm going to look into this further. Sorry I got defensive, but maybe there is a connection there. And so right away, I started to notice now the direct connection between tension with the cold and the pain increasing. That's probably not aha to any of you, but it was to me when I started to see a pattern that was developing. We're now 3 weeks into the sciatica pain, and I would tense before I got out of bed because I knew it was going to hurt. And I would tense before I went to put my clothes on because I knew it was going to hurt, and that made it worse. So, what the next step was to turn to some of the healing modalities I've learned from wonderful members of my community and people I've had on my podcast, like Mary Seiss. She's an expert in EFT or tapping. I noticed that I was afraid of the pain and I was tensing. And I realized this is an excellent opportunity to tap away the fear. So I got in a new routine of getting out of bed, and it definitely hurt badly. And I would go immediately into a hot shower to relax the body and to relax my mind. So I'm honoring that. But in the shower, I started tapping. I want to spend a couple minutes here talking about tapping because it was so helpful and will help for many issues. But until that time, I never had such a practical issue to apply tapping to. So I stood there in the shower and I would say, I'm aware that you have to go and check out the search on YouTube podcast Mary Seiss and Suzanne Giesemann because she'll take you through the whole practice, but you identify what brings on an issue. So I would envision myself that I was going to get out of the shower and have to put my socks and pants on, and I couldn't do it without pain. And I tensed. So I felt how that felt, and it was like an 8 on the fear scale, the tension scale, and I started tapping away that fear until I imagined myself putting my shoes and socks on. And now I'm down to a 5. So I'm not there yet. So I'm standing there in the hot water, tapping, 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 that I am safe to put on my clothes. The more I relax, The slower I move, I will be able to put on my clothes safely. And I got it down to a 1 or 2, just a little doubt that it might not hurt, but not full-blown fear. So I hope you find that that's helpful to you to apply to any situation you're going into and you recognize you have a pattern of being afraid or feeling tension in your body. Why is it? In this case, it was a direct correlation with afraid of pain. And so found it very interesting that the pain was still there, but observing it, honoring it, and not being afraid of it allowed me to relax the body, and I could put on the clothes, and it was very painful, but I didn't tense up. So that was very interesting. And I just affirmed that healing was going on. So let's see what's next. Oh, as a side note there, speaking of tension in the body, I wore a mouth guard at night for 15 years after learning that I ground my teeth at night. I was wearing away the enamel. What does that show you? Tension held in the body. But 2 years ago, I stopped wearing the mouth guard. I felt in myself, I'm so much more at peace in the body, relaxed because of my progress on this spiritual path. At first, a little bit leery of giving up the mouth guard after 15 years, but Spirit was saying, you don't need it. And yet now I'm aware I'm back holding tension in the body. So clearly, the tapping was necessary and really, really helped. So a lifetime of guarding with my body. I know I heard a few ahas from a lot of you on that one. We learn as children to protect ourselves by, getting a little tense, holding yourself guarded. The human is restricted and constricted. The soul is openness itself. Can you feel that difference? Just do me a favor and just clench your fists and just feel a moment when you don't feel safe emotionally. Feel that in your body. Now take a nice deep breath. Release all tension as you exhale really slowly. Move your awareness to the hara. You can put one hand on your belly, one hand on your heart. And what if you say, at the soul level, I am safe. And now just feel and experience openness. I am open. Can you feel that tremendous difference? And you just did it by shifting from constricted human, which is our normal way of being, to the openness of the soul. So anytime you catch yourself tense about anything, whether it's pain or whatever challenge you're facing, or you're just in the habit of carrying yourself that way, maybe when you're working and you get caught up in a deadline or something, shift to soul awareness. It's right here all the time. You are always a soul, and you can just say, I am openness itself, and exhale. So I did start reading Dr. Sarno's book. My friend sent me the DVD, and boy, did it make a lot of sense. So I'm confused. Is this all in my head? But I know it is very much in my body, but I'm willing to honor that there is this brain connection. Well, meanwhile, I get an email, speaking of the brain, from a neurologist, MD, Dr. Jack and Standig. Jack, I hope you're tuning in tonight, or you're tuning in at some point. I met Jack when he came to one of my classes. I was so impressed that a neurologist was studying mediumship with me. I just thought that was the coolest thing. Then he ended up meeting a woman. I don't know how they met, but they met for the first time in person in my mediumship class, and now they're married. I just love that. I love it. But Dr. Jack Anstandig is, he is such a beautiful example of someone who has integrated metaphysical and physical. He is 100% the MD neurologist, but he knows quantum physics and how spirit works. And he reached out and he said, Suzanne, I'd love to see if I can help you with that. May I do a session for you? So totally a gift from him. He has me get on the phone with him and he starts going into my body, going down my spinal column at a distance, traveling through my body and using all of the anatomical words. Well, now I'm at the L4 and the L5, and now I see this and the distal that, and he says, and now we're going to check out this. Oh, yes, I see inflammation here. Yes. Oh, no wonder this is irritated. May I work on this? I said, absolutely. And you could hear him making strange sounds, cutting noises. It was bizarre. But he'd say, okay, where are you now? And I said, I'm lying down. He says, does it hurt to get up? And I said, yes. He said, let me look at that. Let me go up the brain stem now to the brain. It was fascinating. And he says, I want you to get out of bed now. And I stood up from the bed with zero pain. I said, what did you just do? And it was beyond my understanding, but it was very real. He said, all right, we're going to see if we can activate this in other positions so we can get at it when you're activating it. So I said, well, I know if I sit in my meditation chair, it's going to come on. He said, okay, go sit in your meditation chair. I sat there and he goes, oh, yes, I can see this and this and this. And I just was laughing, thinking, this is a neurologist doing this, an MD. If only every physician out there could integrate the two and understand energetic work. So he says, all right, now stand up. And I stood up and there was zero pain. Every time he did a little treatment like that, the pain went away. The problem was it came back every time. So this is giving me further questioning. Okay, now we have the mind and we have the energy body. There's very clearly both are at work here. There's a connection, but we haven't gotten to the spirit side yet. And I have to thank Dr. Stanek gave me 7 one-hour treatments over a period of time. He'd say, well, let's get, when are you available next? Let's do this again Thursday. And every time he did it, I felt relief, but it didn't last. And I know we both felt frustrated and couldn't figure out why, but this is where my guides were saying, you'll get there, but there's a reason it's not lasting. So hopefully I'm modeling now, trusting, connecting the dots, accepting help that's given as long as it feels right, right? Okay, so let me see my notes. Why didn't it last? Yeah. All right. Okay. So another point. This was what was very interesting to me, also pointing towards an energetic cause and a spiritual cause. Just like Dr. Standig was able to take away the pain, 1 minute it's there and 1 minute completely gone, and only when he worked on it, I was reminded that when I do readings, I feel the actual physical symptoms of how those in spirit who come to me passed. I'll get a pain in my kidney and it's very real. I'll say, ow, my heart will literally palpitate. I feel it and I know the person had a heart issue. What's one of my most recent ones? Oh, yeah, pain in the abdomen, right where somebody was wounded before they passed. That pain is very real, and yet it's not actually happening in my body. Why is that? Because everything we experience, including the body, is an experience in consciousness. This body is not solid. It's an experience in consciousness. The experience of solidity is happening in awareness. It seems real because this is the level at which we're experiencing it, but our bodies are not solid to those in the spirit world. My friend Brenda walked right through a wall here. So it's very hard for us to wrap our head around. But I'm thinking maybe Dr. Sarno is correct that maybe the brain isn't correct creating these symptoms. It's happening at an energetic level, but for a reason. So if symptoms that I physically feel in my body, sometimes smelling physical smells. And I know some of you have had this. You smell a loved one's perfume, right? Or flowers. That's very real. If that can happen to serve a purpose, in a reading, it serves the purpose of showing how they pass. It's evidential. Then what is the purpose of this pain? Is what I started asking. And I hope you've all started asking that about whatever it is that you deal with. How is this possible? Okay, so let's see. So, one beautiful thing about the journey with the pain was it really caused me to be ultra present, knowing that if I move just the wrong way, it's like a knife in the back. It's the kind that makes you gasp. Poor Ty for 2 solid months. Are you okay? Because and trying to not give it power, many times he would just feel me going, just breathing into it, just not going, oh my God, I can't stand this and complaining, but just breathing through it and inside saying, isn't that interesting how bad that hurts? That was one of the keys that I learned, not to give the pain power, but to honor it and then watch it pass. But being present allowed me to not do a move that would cause the pain. And if I knew I had to sit down on a certain chair and it was going to hurt, I would deliberately relax first, and that would make it better. I know for a fact, yes, that this particular challenge was given to me because it lasted as long as it did, and only as long as it did, to really allow me to integrate what I've learned and to become more present moment by moment. This is not going to wear off, the presence that I'm experiencing now, and it's taken me 3 months to get here. We always try to be present and listen to our guides once we get on this path, but this required deliberate step, pause, listen, right? Pause, step. So it's like sometimes if you have a cut on your finger, I've talked about this in the past, you can use that as a practice in presence because you don't want to bump that and open up the wound again. Any opportunity that we have to be more present, but not just to be aware of what's going on here in the physical world, but listening, what's my next best step? You will be guided step by step. So let's see. I'm looking at my notes here. All right. Okay. Oh, a really interesting moment for me of being present and being aware was I got in my shower, I'd gone through my tapping, I'm feeling okay, but this was still in the midst of the very precarious pain state. One morning, I'm standing and drying my hair, got the hair dryer over my head, and all of a sudden, pain in this position. I'm over a month into the sciatica journey. Why do I have pain when my hands are over my head? This is the first time I've had pain drying my hair. And so I tuned in, see, moment by moment. And the guide said, look down. And I looked down, and just under my arm is the Tylenol bottle. I had been taking Tylenol as much as I was allowed each day, 3 times a day, 2 Tylenol. Only 1 week ago did I stop taking Tylenol when the pain has finally all gone away. But the Tylenol bottle had a bright red lid on it. It looked like this giant danger signal. And the guide said, subliminal message. Here I am with my hands over my head, hadn't taken my Tylenol, and that red is like, danger, danger, you haven't taken me yet. I said, this is ridiculous. I put my arms down, took the bottle, put it in the cabinet, and the pain went away. What does this tell us about our thoughts and what they trigger? That was stunning to me. So I also tried 4 sessions of acupuncture. That added up money monetarily. I added up all the money I spent on this over 2 months. It was probably about $2,000. And the acupuncture I truly felt was going to help, but the problem was the pain getting on and off the table completely obliterated all the good it did. So that didn't help. I tried physical therapy, that didn't help. So I'm trying all of the physical things. I'm taking Tylenol 3 times a day. My pack of frozen peas became my friend. That's what I use for an ice pack. I don't ever want to eat another frozen pea in my life. I told Ty, get rid of those. I don't want to see them ever again. I knew I was starting to heal when I no longer needed the peas, but imagine 6 weeks of walking around with a pack of frozen peas stuffed in your belt, right? So we did the ice, we did the medication, acupuncture, physical therapy. I tried a massage, but it hurt too much to lie on the table. So honoring the physical aspects, doing the tapping, honoring the mental, honoring the emotional side of not being afraid of it. I'm getting partial relief. But what about the spiritual aspect? So here we go now, diving into that. Let's see. In the Forgotten Center workshop, I mentioned that as I learned about the hara, that many of my issues did originate in the belly area. Have had a lifetime of being in mission mode. You know, the Navy officer, gonna get it done. I'm gonna be a strong woman. I'm a weightlifter instead of a yoga person. And the guides showed me time to soften a bit. And that's why I've really enjoyed having to slow down. In fact, we're getting ready to make a move here, and poor Ty, 30 years together, we have moved at least 14 times with the Navy and our other moves, full moves, boxing everything up. And I don't want to use the word neurotic, but I would have every box unpacked within 24 hours and the pictures hung on the wall. I mean, it's ridiculous. Talk about mission mode. And he can't sit down and not work if I'm working. That's his personality. And I looked at him and I said, Ty, I really have changed as a result of this. Next move we make, which is coming up here, I said, I am not going to have those boxes undone in 24 hours. That for me is huge because that's a whole mental and emotional release. So whatever you all are neurotic about, there's probably some other issue related there that you might benefit from looking at. But he said, yeah, you're going to give me 48 hours. I said, no, maybe 72. We'll see. I'll let you all know. But I had no idea that beyond the mission mode, get her done mentality that the commander had been carrying around, there were still layers to free up. There were blocks right there at the first and second chakra, right there where the hara is, that needed to be cleared. And what's interesting is if you were part of the Forgotten Center workshop, you know that most of this started after the healer Gregory Coleman removed a major block under my heart chakra, right between the heart and the hara. So all of a sudden now we have greater flow from head and heart to hara, and it's meeting massive blocks that I didn't know were there. No wonder, pain. But if you don't know what you don't know, if you don't know that you have blocks, Spirit says Spirit's going to find a way to show it to you. So don't be afraid of this because this is the whole point of tonight. Yes, this has been a painful period for me, but I'm in just such a beautiful place right now. And I want that for all of you because of the willingness to connect the dots and look at all the layers. It's not just spiritual, it's not just emotional or mental, and it's not just physical. Any challenge you have has to have an element of all of those because all of those are layers of your human energy field that completely interpenetrate each other. There is no separation. There may be one layer, physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, that has more importance, but they all need to be looked at. So during this time of dealing with the pain, this is divine timing. My divine friend Lynette Setscorn published one of her divine blog posts. She's called, I think, oh gosh, Lynette, I'm sorry, The Unwitting Mystic, The Unwilling. Somebody might have to put that in the chat for me. Please look it up and put a link, Bev. Okay? Bev, Lynette's blog post. Almost every time that Lynette posts a blog post, I love it. I love her writing. I'll put it on social media so that people read it more. This time she made a blog post about an app she found with breath work in it. And she was recommending it, but with the caveat, hey, it's a subscription price, and I'm not getting anything for recommending this, but it has made a tremendous difference in my life. Well, I didn't forward that blog post because I don't like to suggest anything unless I've personally experienced it and can vouch for it. So I said to Lynette, I want to check out the breathwork app. It sounds really cool. Little did I know that was going to be a key in my healing. I've done breathwork in the past. What is breathwork? Besides just deep breathing, there are certain patterns you can do that truly oxygenate every cell in your physical body, but really get the life force flowing. And it can blast right through some blocks you have. It can also lead you to deep states of meditative peace. There are multiple uses there. Bev just put it in the link there. Her blog. An unexpected mystic. There we go. Thanks, Bev. Sorry, Lynette. So I said you can get like a free week. So I went, and it's called, oh, I have it here somewhere. Hang on. Elemental Rhythm is the name of the app. And I started out with this 40-minute meditation that Lynette said she absolutely loved. Great music, great rhythms, different breathing practices. Well, I set aside 40 minutes and did it. Did not enjoy it at all. I have done some of these breathing practices where you practically hyperventilate for a purpose. It absolutely gets you to an expanded state of consciousness with great results, but I panic when I do them. And it happened this time. I did this 40-minute meditation, and I find myself panicking, but the guy that narrates it, he's a fellow Shift Network teacher, Gio Di Bartolomeo. He's the one that did the Elemental Rhythm app. He's fantastic. He encourages you. Come on, keep going. You're almost there. You can do it. So even though my whole body is screaming, I don't like this, I could die, I kept going. And at the end, I thought, okay, I did it. I can feel all my cells vibrating. But I reached out to Lynette and I said, that one you did, how do you get past the panic? Don't you panic? And she said, no, I don't panic. I loved it. So right away, I'm thinking, okay, what's going on here? Why am I panicking? This is one time where I turned to AI for the answer because I intuited there was a physical reason for this. So there's a time for AI and there's a time for asking your guides. And I went on and I said, why am I panicking? Blah, blah, blah. And indeed, they said it could be because of the lack of CO2 when you're doing carbon dioxide, when you're doing these breathing practices, that you initiate the fight or flight syndrome. And that will probably lessen with time. But there also could be some underlying metaphysical reasons. So I thought that was interesting. But because there are always multiple layers and levels of reasons, then I took it into meditation. Why am I panicking when I do this guided meditation? Okay, let's see. Okay, so I did feel there was benefit in the app, so I signed up for a monthly subscription. And now that I open the app up, not just the free trial online, there's all these practices in it. And I'm going through them and I get snagged. Now, y'all know what a snag is. It's when you're looking at a whole bunch of things before you and one of them pops out at you. These were specific 15-minute practices to reprogram beliefs on various issues. So I started swiping through them. I am bad. Nope, not me. I am unworthy, not my belief. You can see that this would help certain people. So I'm swiping through, and then I read, I am unsafe. Snag. And I went, I am unsafe. Why am I unsafe? I don't feel unsafe. But I did the guided meditation. There was no panicking because he doesn't get you quite as hyperventilating in that one. And it was beautiful. But I'm thinking, wow, I love when he says, I am allowed to relax. I am allowed to feel safe. It is safe to feel safe. We're going right back to the first root chakra, aren't we? Safety and security. And this is why I'm happy to share this with you all tonight, because Spirit says yes, every one of us carries some element of not feeling safe in these bodies. And most of it goes back to childhood. So I started doing that practice, the I am unsafe 15-minute session at the beginning of my morning meditation. And I learned quickly I couldn't put my eye makeup on before meditating because every time I did it, tears are coming out, but I still don't know why. So I go to bed each night and I ask Spirit, show me what I'm not seeing. I'm asking for assistance. So if you're a note taker, write that one down if you're not already doing it. Okay, we don't need to, sorry for all you psychologists out there, but your guides know what you need. They're putting what you need right in front of you if you start connecting the dots and following the thread. The next day in meditation, in answer to asking, I got this Daily Way message, which some of you may have read. I do want to say not nearly every Daily Way message applies directly to me. Sometimes I'll have to say to Ty, this one is not about me and you when I get the daily messages. This one was, but it applies to all of us. And Spirit Sanaya said, layers and layers, peel them back. Spirit's got your back. Trauma leaves a wound. You are not doomed. Spirit's got your back. I can't go on. False beliefs be gone. Spirit's got your back. Knowing there's no end, now you can bend. Spirit's got your back. Flow, dear soul, you have always been whole. Spirit's got your back. You are so very loved. That one was huge. I love the way they were going back to rhyming, but with that cadence there. And I'm like, all right, then, Spirit, show me why I feel unsafe. And all of a sudden, they took me on a mini life review. This is just a few days into the daily I am safe. It's called I am unsafe. I don't like that title. I wish it would say I am safe because that's what I'm trying to program, but that's what they get to. And on this mini life review, starting way back, I see how I was always walking on eggshells around my mother. At any one point, she could give me the look. I didn't feel safe around my father, even though I thought I did, because he would do what my mother wanted. Bill, she didn't clean her room, go spank her, little things like that, or a beating from my mother, not feeling safe from a very young age. My mother who would say, you're not sick, go to school. You're not allowed to be sick. Anybody else grow up with that? I think that's actually common for a certain generation. And then we fast forwarded. I completely suppressed the invasion of Panama, 1987. I was there on the ground, heard the first shells hitting. I got the combat action ribbon for being shot at. I was like, how could I forget that? Did I ever deal with that? Then I was taken to 9/11, walking through the halls of the Pentagon while it was on fire, working for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and feeling unsafe that I was going to get in trouble at any time. You can see various levels of unsafety here, but talk about a look. if I could get a look from my mother, one look from the general would definitely make me feel unsafe. Then they took me to, we sailed off into the sunset after I retired to run away from 9/11 and everything. But the fear almost daily of sailing full time, that was our home. If the boat sinks, not only is your life in danger, but that was our entire belongings. We had sold our house and cars, that we had very little money, just enough to sail around. And then sailing in the dark night after night. If you have never sailed in the dark, it's rather frightening. Sailing in the fog and seeing on the radar a big ship coming up behind you and having it blast its foghorn at you. Moments of fear, 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 but I had to suck it up because I'm a good sailor and a good partner to tie, right? But I just pushed it down. Where? Into the hara. And then that one moment crossing the Atlantic, there we are out in the middle of the Atlantic, 900 miles from shore in the middle of the dark. And one of the crew members we took with us for that crossing shouts, "All hands on deck now!" And I knew it was Ty's turn on deck. Had he gone overboard? I was sure my husband had gone overboard in the dark, and you're not going to find him. But he was there. So moments of fear that we just learned to shove down and not process. And then the worst moment of all, Susan's funeral. And my guides showed me how I was in the car with the rest of the family, the first car in the funeral procession, and my knees were knocking, just like on the table in the ER on August 18th of this year, because my body was in full fight or flight, and I had no spiritual tools. I didn't know how to process that. So what did I do? Shoved it down into the hara. That was the short list that they showed me. They showed me I didn't feel safe in college on my own for the first time. I go home so homesick the first weekend. I should have stayed and made friends, but I couldn't stand the separation anxiety. I go home only to discover my parents don't know how to comfort me. So where do I go? Right? Shove it down. Relationship stuff. It's all right there. So the key to all of this, though, is had any of that happened now, I would know how to deal with that. I would shift to observer. I would know that this is a role I'm playing. But I had none of those tools then. So they've all just been festering until this major block was removed by Gregory Coleman. The life force can now flow and it's hitting those blocks. So what happens? Bam! We're going to get her attention in a big way. Light up that major nerve, the sciatic nerve. It runs all the way down to the earth through the leg. Yeah. Just simmering. So, can you start to see the spiritual aspects here at work? And I've been teaching my students all along, the more gunk you can clean out in your system, the clearer your connection will be. But if you don't know what you don't know, Spirit's going to find a way to get your attention. That's why any issue you're dealing with is an opportunity. Like I said in the email that went out, an invitation from your soul to dig a little deeper, to honor your soul's journey, to honor where you are and what brought you here, and to say, this is a chance for healing. I wonder just how far I can go, how much I can clear out. But Spirit, I don't know what's blocking me. Show me. I'm willing to look. So it's very interesting that my friend Anne Wernemont reached out. She said, Suzanne, look at this diagram I found of sciatica when I looked it up, knowing what you're going through. And it shows the sciatica nerve branching out from the lumbar region, the back. She said, it looks just like a lightning bolt going down the legs. And it does. I found that that's my lightning bolt. Moment after moment throughout the day, jabbing me, giving me a zing. Pay attention, pay attention. This is your chance to finally heal. So I had a lucid nightmare in the midst of all of this. It was my very first time to have I've had lots of lucid dreams. That's when you're aware you're dreaming and you can moderately control the direction it goes, but we never have full control. But you're like, oh, cool, this is a dream. I'm going to stay in it. This was my very first time to be lucid in a nightmare. I was kidnapped by foreigners. They stripped me naked. They tied me in a car with a bomb at my feet, and it started to fill up with water. I knew I was going to die. I knew it was a dream. I was completely, but for some reason, I didn't want to come out of it. I wanted to observe this nightmare. I felt zero fear. That was the interesting part of this lucid nightmare. I knew I was going to die, but I felt no fear. And I remember thinking, why am I not coming out of this nightmare? And Spirit said, bingo. Why are you not coming out of this sciatica pain? This has to be released. You see, when we become lucid and realize that at the soul level, we're whole and complete, but at the human level, we're all carrying trauma. From a very young age, we're taught by other human beings to guard our true nature, to close ourselves off, to be afraid of being afraid. It becomes programmed. That's why I started the tapping when I saw, oh my gosh, I'm actually programming myself to tense up because there's pain coming. We're all programmed to feel separation from each other because they might hurt us instead of the openness of the soul. This is one of the greatest gifts I've experienced now that I've released all of this, and I'll show you how I released it. My sense of openness is so amplified now. I mean, I loved everybody before in the last few years on this journey, but now I just want to hug everybody. I feel so open. I still have boundaries, but the soul is just taking front and center when you realize how guarded we are because we have of these blocks that we've pushed stuff down. So when I did waken from that lucid dream, first thing in the morning, I go into meditation after the hot shower, which I don't need to do first thing anymore now because of no more pain. And Susan showed up, my Susan in spirit. And I said, Susan, why are you here? And she said, what have you learned, Suzanne? And I said, you tell me, Susan, because I hadn't learned it all yet. Notice how you really can interact real time with your loved ones across the veil. And she said, what you're learning is that trauma and drama can drown you, dragging you underwater deep into unconsciousness. Yes, it can. She said, but I wrote this down, but as we become lucid, perhaps as a result of pain, you learned that you're being breathed. How often have you heard me say that, right? But you can choose to surrender and be guided back to the surface, releasing the trauma, but most importantly, releasing, totally believing in the dream to which you all give so much power. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. This life is real, but it is an adventure in consciousness. It's like a dream. When we become lucid in this nightmare, it turns more into a pleasant dream. There will still be challenges, but I recalled hearing her description, a book I read by Father Richard Rohr, who many of you probably know. It's wonderful work, R-O-H-R. And this book was called Breathing Underwater. Remember, in my nightmare, the car was filling with water and I knew I was not going to die. And she said, your drama and trauma can drag you underwater, but you are being breathed by spirit. So I found that book, Breathing Underwater, on my Kindle, because I have almost everything he's written. And the title's based on a poem by a nun, Sister Carol Bielek, with the same name, Breathing Underwater. And they share in that poem and in the book what Susan was saying, that we can't escape life's challenges, but by realizing who we are, Through spiritual awakening, self-realization, with the self being the higher self, we find a way to breathe, even in places that we once thought we couldn't survive. A friend just said to me recently, I can't stand this. It's too much. And my first advice was, just breathe. Just breathe and slow down. Now we're going to shift and observe. Wow. So I knew from that lucid nightmare, Susan's visit, the mini life review, that the pain was actually all that sciatica pain, the knife pain, the deep pain was a journey to deep healing in the lower safety and survival chakras that had been holding decades of unresolved trauma. How's everybody doing? Why don't we take a moment to breathe? Why don't we do just a little reset here? Because it gets a little heavy stuff, huh? And that reset would just be to close your eyes for a moment, take in a nice slow breath. I'll count you. Breathe in to 4, 2, 3, 4, out 4, 2, 3, 4. Slow it down even more. Breathe in, 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 in. Now we're going to breathe out to 8, 2, 3, 4. Totally relax. 5, 6, 7, 8. Continue breathing nice and slowly. Relax your forehead and your face and your neck and shoulders, your torso, your legs, your ankles, your feet. Drop your awareness down into the hara, the belly area, and affirm, I am safe here in the center of my being. Here I live as a soul, safely whole. Move your awareness up to the heart. Feel a wave of gratitude for healing that's taking place, and just affirm, here as a soul I love. Move your awareness up to the third eye, the head, and affirm, here I as a soul see without my physical eyes what I need to know. Let's take another slow, deep breath and affirm, I am a soul. I am perfectly whole at the soul level. I am willing to see and know what is next for me on my journey of healing. I affirm I am safe, even though this talk may be stirring up sediment that I had allowed to settle down into the depths of my being. I know that my soul is always safe. I am allowed to relax. It is safe to feel safe. I know that I am never alone. I know that I have help from the spirit world, and I'm so grateful for that. I embrace opportunities to heal and grow and return to wholeness. Taking a nice, refreshing breath. Whew, and just breathe it out kind of fast and come on back. All right, so I hope some light bulbs are going off. Kind of a serious night tonight, but hopefully helpful. So let's see. So I was getting better. I had identified these areas where I didn't feel safe. Now I'm acknowledging them. What you feel, you can heal. I'm still in the back of my mind a little bit confused about Dr. Sarno's work and how much of this is all in the head. I know it's not. I'm doing pretty well. And then I wake up one morning and have a major flare up. This was probably 4 weeks ago. Massive pain first thing in the morning. I was due to interview Lee Carroll and his wife Monica on my podcast, pre-recorded at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's now 7:30. I knew there was no way I could do that because I would not be comfortable sitting for an hour. So I didn't have anybody's phone number. By the way, if you don't know Lee Carroll, he channels Cryon. He's very well known and he's a great channel. They're both lovely people. So I emailed his assistant and I emailed both of them. I had all three email addresses and said, I have to postpone. I'm having some major sciatica pain. And then the pain was so bad, I thought, I need physical help from a physical doctor. I, at this point, had already been talking to Dr. Jack Ann Standig, my neurologist friend, who agreed with me that it would probably be okay to see a pain management specialist. Even though I'm getting at the spiritual side of this and the mental and emotional side, I had read enough about pain management clinics that can give you an epidural injection, putting steroids directly at the area where the pain is without affecting your whole system. So with his blessing and with my spirit's blessing, I had made an appointment for a couple weeks away, but I was in so much pain and they couldn't see me right away. I remembered there is a neurosurgeon, back surgery specialist 2 blocks from my house in Idaho. Ty wasn't home. I go limping over there, walk in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and said to the receptionist, "Is the doctor in?" She said, "No, he's not even in today." I said, "I need an appointment. I'm in so much pain. I can't handle this anymore after 6 weeks of this." And she said, "Well, he can't see you for another month." And I said, "I'm leaving Idaho in 2 weeks." She said, "You realize he's a surgeon, right? Like, what is he going to do for you?" But I'm not thinking straight. Okay. So it was clear she couldn't help me, but she also completely lacked compassion, which I was needing at that time. So on my walk back to the house, I became the crazy lady, ranting out loud, walking the 2 blocks. If anybody had driven by, I would have been the person talking to herself, ranting. I get back to the house. We have a little guest room over our garage. I knew I needed to let this out and I didn't want to frighten my dogs. So I went into the apartment over the garage and I ranted like crazy. I screamed at spirit and I said, "If this is in my mind, here's the rage. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling all of it. Why is this pain still here?" So even in the midst of seeing all this, I hadn't released it yet, right? But I had that moment and I go back downstairs and I look at my computer and there's Lee Carroll and Monica waiting in my Zoom room. They hadn't gotten the word that I had canceled and I couldn't leave them sit there. So this was a real low point for me. I bring them on the Zoom screen and I remember I'm sitting there like this and I couldn't get my head out of my hands and my eyes are all red and teary. And I said, "I can't do this today. You didn't get the word." They said, "We didn't get the word. What's wrong?" I said, "I'm just in a lot of pain." And they said, "We'll reschedule. Is there anything we can do for you?" And I said, "Send healing." So this was another key for me. Here we have one of the world's greatest channels, Lee Carroll, and we have neurosurgeons and everybody, and it still doesn't take away the pain. I ended up that morning curled up in a fetal position on the floor. Ty wasn't there, just needing comfort. So just to show you that nothing took it away immediately. But I went online and looked up, why do we curl up in a ball in a fetal position when we're in pain? And AI said that's also programmed in animals as well to curl up when in pain. And they reminded me of those experiments they do on mice where they give random pain. You never know when it's coming and it just comes out of nowhere. And that causes stress beyond normal stress. So dealing with all of that at that time, still getting help from my beautiful healing friends. Spirit comes in and says, "This is not punishment. You're almost there. Don't give up hope." So notice that in the moments when there is no pain, That's the waveforms of life, right? It will pass. Tuning in and asking what else I needed. I didn't give up hope. So let me move forward. Okay, so I go to the pain clinic when my appointment comes around. The doctor whizzed in, never met him. He just rushes in. He says, just like this, not even hello. All right, you have a herniated disc at L5 pressing on S1. I can see you've already noted that you don't want to have ablation treatment where we go in and burn the nerve. No, but I can do a nerve epidural shot. And I said, yes, I'd like that very much. But his bedside manner was a little lacking, I would say. No comfort there at all. I said, when can you do this? Because I'm ready. And he said, well, I could do it tomorrow if your insurance would pay for it. And I said, I'll pay for it. I was that ready for it. I'm working the spiritual side, I'm working the mental and emotional, but I'm also working the human. And his eyes got big, and I said, well, how much would it be? Actually, I better ask that question first. And it was steep, but it was doable. So we scheduled it for the next day. I get home and there's a phone call. Oh, guess what? Your insurance was already approved in advance. So I was like, thank you, Spirit. So that morning, aware that the very next day I have to do the Forgotten Center workshop. Okay, the next morning, the Friday before the Forgotten Center workshop, I was going to go get one of these things where they put a needle in 6 needles in your back right at the point of the pain and shoot steroids right in there to take down the inflammation. That morning, I went into meditation and I prayed, please guide his hands, may this go smoothly. And I sensed Jesus step in, which was something that has happened quite a bit in my meditation over the years. And I welcomed him, and he again reminded me, Spirit's got your back, which was a beautiful thing. So he also reminded me of this vision that I shared in the Forgotten Center workshop, where a whole circle of beings stood around me and my friend Annie Bond, just showing us that we're all always surrounded by helpers. Well, the procedure was not what I expected. I went into quite a bit of pain on the table, a sensation that I've never had before. I can't even put into words what it was like, but it was very frightening. And when I got off the table, I looked at the doctor. I said, something's wrong. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, this feeling that I have. He said, describe it. I said, I can't describe it, but I can't even describe it. But then the pain set in, and it was worse than when I went in. And he said, it'll be all right. It'll pass, like next patient. Well, I hobbled out of the clinic with Ty. We got to the car, and I couldn't get in the car. The pain was so bad I couldn't sit in the car. I couldn't curl up in the car. I couldn't even bend enough to get in the door of the car. And I looked at Ty, and in a very significant phrase, I said, I can't go home. And this is the existential pain of all of us. We just want to go home to our spiritual home, which means we want to find wholeness, because we're already home and whole at the spiritual level. But this was a moment of, oh my God, what do we do? So we go back inside, and I said, get the doctor out here right now. The commander was like right there. Get the doctor out here. Luckily, it was lunch and he didn't have any patients. He took me in a treatment room and he said, what's wrong? I said, I just explained how bad the pain was, and what happens again? Shaking like crazy, knees knocking, the whole deal. Body's in full fight or flight. Unbelievably, the pain management clinic had no strong drugs. They had a Toradol shot, which is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, but next to nothing to help. He said, you have to go to an urgent care clinic. And I said, how am I supposed to do that? I can't get in my car. And he said, well, there's one down the road. It was a quarter of a mile away. And I walked step by step, just like that, little step. But first I said, doctor, call them personally and tell them what's going on here so they will give me narcotics, because they're not going to listen to me if I just go and say I'm hurting. You call them and tell them what you did to me. He was like, yes, ma'am. So I limped down there and they said, oh, you're the one the doctor called about. We'll be with you in a moment. I looked down. I shared this in the Forgotten Center workshop. I looked down and I was snagged. Sitting there on a table was a little miniature New Testament. I'm not a Bible reader, but I knew that was for me. I picked it up and I knew I would open it to just the right page that I needed. And I knew my eyes would fall on just the right verse. That's that the soul, even in the midst of the pain, and my eyes fell right onto I and the Father are one. It to me was Jesus saying, I'm right here. You will get through this. We're all one. I took that Bible and I took it with me. It's lying by my bed. It was like a God wink that we are not alone in the midst of our pain. Went into the back. The doctor came in, have a seat. I can't. I can't sit down. They asked, what's your pain level? My whole life, I have never wanted to claim a 10 because I couldn't imagine the worst pain that you can imagine, which is the definition of a 10. And I looked at him and I said, it's a 10. And I realized then I had gotten to rock bottom. And I knew now the healing was going to happen because there was nowhere to go but up. So he gave me morphine. And it didn't make me loopy. It took away the pain and brought on this complete and utter peace. Just peace. And I called Dr. Anstandig as Ty drove me home because I was able to get in the car. And I told him what had happened. And he said, oh, probably the area was so compressed just when they put that liquid right in there, it made it worse. It was more compressed. He should have put it in higher and let it dribble down. But he reassured me that I would be fine. So now out of pain, my guides, here's where the real healing started. From the 10, rock bottom, with Jesus saying, we're all one with Source. Somebody in the Forgotten Center asked the question, what if you don't follow Jesus? What if Jesus isn't part of your teachings? The messages are what matters about unity consciousness. We are all connected to the same source. So I went up to my bedroom and I pulled out the Elemental Rhythm app and I went back to that 40-minute meditation that I had panicked with at first. And I knew I was going to have a major release of that whole list of everything that I had shoved down to that point, that it was time. And so I put earpods in. He had gone off to go do something. He knew I was fine. I was so glad he wasn't in the house because I had the dogs on the bed beside me. And when that started and I got in an expanded state, I started sobbing and the tears. And I'm hearing, you are releasing all of that. It's all part of your story. You didn't know how to deal with it at the time. You no longer need to carry it. And moving forward, any trauma or drama, you know how to deal with it by calling on your guides, by stepping onto the balcony, observing, by repeating this too shall pass. Isn't that interesting? Trusting spirit. But all of that I had identified and been carrying just was released. The tears were flowing so much I could feel them pooling in my ears because I'm lying down, and my poor dog had never heard me sob like that. And Nellie came over and was on the bed with me, licking and licking and licking my tears. It was not a painful moment. It was a beautiful moment. And I wish all of you will experience something like that. You can't make it happen, but you can be guided to these moments when you surrender. That's what surrender is all about. I can't heal this on my own. I'm at rock bottom. This is a 10. I need help. I've been sent healers in the form of beautiful friends giving me healing. Jesus came to me. Jesus couldn't heal it all at once, didn't, on purpose. Cryon's healing didn't work. my own meditations, my stepdaughter didn't help. They all fed into that. I had to be the one to get to this point of identifying with their help what was blocking and be ready to release and be guided to just the right meditation for me in that moment. Your journey may be different, but you can see how you don't give up and you just see how you're given exactly what you need. So the feeling of contentment remained long after the morphine wore off. And that was a result of releasing those blocks, those boulders that I'd been carrying around. And here's the hopeful part for all of you, that feeling that I had while on the morphine is still with me. And I know that some people use ayahuasca or have other psychedelics and it blows their mind open, or ketamine, and it really provides a healing. But we don't need to keep going back to those. Meditation, in some senses, will get us to healing and does heal at many levels. But I loved that the morphine took away the pain long enough that I was able to experience that pure contentment. And then Spirit showed me that's our natural state when you've healed. I hope that gives you hope. Yeah. So that was the next morning when the guides woke me at 4 a.m. and gave me this big old download about how I would share all of this with all of you and some of the final teaching that we'll wrap up with here in a little bit. But the rest of that weekend, I got through the 6-hour workshop. I didn't have pain because that shot had kicked in a bit. It didn't last, but that's okay because I'd healed the trauma, you see? Not completely. There is a part B here that's coming up. But for the rest of the weekend, I honored a very vulnerable state that I felt for about 2, 3 days. And I went on AI and I said to do it. It says, could an epidural steroid shot cause vulnerability? Could the after effects of morphine cause vulnerability? And the answer was absolutely yes. I knew it was chemical and emotional, that I felt weepy and tired, and I had to reassure Ty, it's not you, honey. I just need to cocoon a little. And so I sat around with a blanket all weekend and I didn't do much and I just rested and honored the vulnerability. And sure enough, when all of that cleared out of the system in about 3 days, that lifted. Still was having a bit of pain, but we had, just to show you a few more God winks that Spirit is always with us and you can connect the dots. I was feeling good enough to go for a gentle hike with Ty. I've been able to walk pretty much throughout the whole sciatica episode. There were a few days when walking was painful, but for the most part, luckily could still walk. And so we said, let's find a gentle walk in nature here in Idaho, someplace we've never been. So we start looking online, and I called the neighbor who been there a long time. And I said, we're looking at this area. And they said, no, you should try the Mackenzie Preserve. Mackenzie, it's really great. I said, never heard of that. Where is it? They said, oh, it's only about 25 minutes away. I said, Mackenzie, never heard of it. So I look it up, MC Mackenzie, MAC Mackenzie, finally found it. We went and it was lovely. The very next day, 2 members of our community, I know at least one of them, Ann Morgan, hi Ann, is tuning in now. 2 sisters, Gail and her sister Ann, reach out to me in separate emails. You know, we've been following your journey with the back. We want to do some healing for you, but in the meantime, you got to get this book about the Mackenzie method. I said, seriously? Really? The Mackenzie method? I got the book. Super helpful. And that's the book that showed me it's not just that we do too much sitting, it's how we're sitting. And thanks to the Mackenzie method, I bought certain lumbar positioning pillows like the one I've been sitting on all evening to just put in the small of the back. I sleep with one now. That has been a tremendous part of the healing. So again, honoring the physical body, but now still working on the spiritual body. The mental aspect's been doing pretty well all along. Okay, So let's see. The day after the workshop, I'm contacted by Dr. Tom Freeman, husband of a woman Suzanne Freeman, wonderful author, very spiritual woman, who attended the workshop. She watched the workshop, and I had mentioned the issues in the back, and she said, Tom, you have to talk to Suzanne. You got to help her because he's a neurosurgeon. So next thing you know, I'm getting a free consult over the phone with a professor emeritus of neurosurgery, brilliant man, now retired, who said, no, I want to talk to you on Zoom. Spent an entire hour with me saying, well, do you have pain in this position? What's your pain in that position? Unlike the doctor that just whizzed in, took one look at my MRI and said, this is your issue, I'm giving you a shot. Dr. Freeman looked very carefully at my symptoms, said exactly what was going on, but the biggest thing he did was the reassurance. This is not all in your head. He said that Dr. Sarno's work can be true, but it applies to people after they've given the issue a chance to heal. If you still have pain after it's likely healed, then it's mind-body syndrome. But he said, what you have is very real, causes pain, but takes 3 months to heal. And at that point, I was like, what was that, on October 4th? Do the math. It wasn't yet 2 months. He said, just don't go back into your mode like my wife. You have to do everything all at once. Don't overdo it. Don't hop back on your bike. Don't do all this crazy stuff. Don't lift anything over 25 pounds and let it heal. That disc will heal over and you will be okay, but don't re-injure it. And he said, but it's the people who still have the pain after the 3 month that can benefit from Dr. Sarno and others like Dr. Schubiner, their work. That was hugely helpful for me. Really gave me a dose of hope that beyond healing the spiritual stuff, the back would be okay. All right, so now all the parts are coming together, right? The body part of the mind, body, spirit is very important. So let's see. So with this reassurance, I stopped physical therapy. It wasn't helping. No more acupuncture. Still need the Tylenol. Don't need my bag of peas anymore. And my wonderful spiritual friends start coming out of the woodwork. Gail and Anne, the sisters, are sending me healing during their Qigong session every day. And beautiful Anne Morgan gives me a shamanic healing as a gift, a 1 hour shamanic healing. Mary Sassone, the animal communicator, is also a human healer. She gifted me a healing session. All of these, I'm starting to feel the effects, but I know what I'm healing now, right? I had that major release, but we want to make sure that that really took. Am I forgetting anyone? Well, the final piece was Gregory Coleman held a 90-minute workshop. I don't know how many of you attended that, but he is going to put it online in about a week. So check out his website in about a week, spirithealsme.com. Very, very helpful workshop. I attended it. And at the end, he went through a practice, a little process that we all can do to heal whatever ails us. He had helped me with my own issues twice already, but now I have all this trauma, that the list of things, reasons why I didn't feel safe. I wrote them all down this time, wrote them down, even though I feel that with the ongoing meditation of I am safe, the deep breathing, the release I had while on morphine, I'm going to do Gregory Coleman's method. And he had us write it down, fold it up, and meditate, holding it to our heart, seeing ourselves as healed 3 days in a row, and then you're supposed to burn it. So I did that. By the way, I heard a few of you say, but what if I don't have this big community? What if I don't know a bunch of healers like you do, Suzanne? Put out to the universe that just who you need will come into your life, or that you will be led to just the right person. my issue was a really big one with multiple layers. I know part of it is so I could share it with all of you, but you don't need 10 different healers, right? Sometimes you can heal yourself just by practicing what we're talking about this evening. But really, it comes with the intention of asking Spirit, I need assistance. I know that we're given each other in human form for a reason. Please send me or put in my path just the right person to help me. And you'll be inspired and you'll be snagged by a business card, or somebody will say something, or you'll ask the right person who knows the right person. So you will find help. Okay. So on the third day of working with that list, realizing that I'd already had this major release, but let's make sure we get all the little bits and pieces out of me once and for all, I burned it. And what's interesting is Susan came to me in the middle of the night after burning that with a little tingly feeling on my hip. If you've read my book, Making the Afterlife Connection, the very first story in the introduction talks about how she came to me when I was in Phoenix for the Helping Parents Heal conference with this sparkly feeling on my hip with a beautiful message about how we are all the light of spirit, like that sparkling light on my hip. And I made the connection that Susan, there with me in Phoenix, had a large tattoo of a phoenix on her hip. And she came to me just after I burned that paper, and she said, now you can rise from the ashes too. Isn't that cool? And that's what this journey is all about. So funny, what happened when I went to Phoenix after that? I went to Phoenix like the next week after that, still feeling pain a little bit on and off. But then the following week, I was in Tucson just last week, and suddenly no more pain. Just like 10 days ago, the first time in 2 months that I did not need Tylenol. Nothing. No ice. No, I haven't needed ice for a while, but minor little twinges every now and then just to remind me, stay present. Stay present. So instead of needing the full 3 months, like Dr. Freeman said it usually takes to heal, at 2 months, the total healing happened. The guides say, yes, you can say total because it was the spiritual healing. And those little zings are still there because we're in the midst of moving and packing, and it's just enough to say, don't be stupid. We're still, we don't want to re-injure that. So the practice of being present, once again, is so very important. It's very interesting. I'm reminded of, going off the Tylenol, going off meds. I remember doing a reading years ago for a woman I brought through her son who had completed suicide. And he showed his presence so clearly with evidence. He's the one that showed me a toothpick hanging out of his mouth all the time, always had a toothpick. And his mother said, that's my son. That toothpick. Anybody that knew him knew that toothpick. Oh my God, he's right here. And she said to me at the end of the reading, do I still need to take my meds? I'm on them because I miss him so much, but I don't think I need them now. And I said, check with your doctor. You might need to wean yourself off, but your son says you don't need them, Mom. And she wrote to me the next week and she said, Suzanne, people at work are saying, what's got into you? You're like a different person. Are you on different meds? And I say to them, no, my son is my med. I just thought that was the most beautiful thing. So we honor our medication, right, in our world. I hope that if anything this evening, I've Spirit is saying, see, we didn't tell you how long this was going to go because it's going to be perfect. We're actually going to end right about on time, but we'll do some Q&A at the end. I want to answer any questions you have, but we honor the medication, but we honor all parts of this equation. It was while in Phoenix watching Wolf's Message for the 23rd time, 22nd time, having memorized all the lines. One line by Lynette snagged me. It's near the end. And she says, thank you, Suzanne. And thank you, Wolf, for this healing you've brought me and all of us. And the reason it snagged me that night, having been on this journey and not realizing I was less than a week from total healing physically, is the healing she's talking about from Wolf's message that we are souls here and now, that we are part of this web. I hope I've shown you this evening how everything is connected and that love is what connects us. Look at how the love brought these beautiful people into my life when I needed them and from across the veil. The healing is knowing that. The healing is being able to shift from the constricted human fear to that openness. That's home. We can go home anytime when we know that. We can find the utter peace and contentment without needing to alter our minds with drugs, to numb them with alcohol and other substances. It's possible when we live the awakened way. And that was Wolf's message to all of us. So my personal program now, hopefully it will remain, but how did I get here? Just to recap it all, being aware, realizing there's multifaceted causes of the physical pain, doing the breath work with the I am safe meditation, moving with purpose and presence, practicing gratitude regularly, even in the midst of it, for the moments when I wasn't in pain. Now I see, I'm so grateful for this pain. I'm so grateful it was so bad that I had to pay attention. I'm so grateful it was temporary. I ask that it never come back again, but if it does, then it's probably something else I have to see. I'm so grateful for the breathing practices. I know I won't need a mouth guard again. I find myself so much more relaxed. I don't have to unpack a whole house in 24 hours. I love people even more. You saw the results in the Q&A session the other night when I channeled. I did a reading. Did I tell about the reading? Yes, where I channeled the guy straight on. So I hope that I've given you hope this evening. It's really funny that when the pain was really bad, I realized that the sofa we had in our house in Idaho was not supportive of my back. I said, Ty, we need a recliner type sofa and we need to change this out. So let's give these really good sofas to charity if we're going to bring in a more supportive sofa. And we asked the neighbor, who's a good place to give this to? She said, oh, there's an organization that helps first responders and military veterans. It's called New Beginnings. I thought, how appropriate is that, right? Because as we find healing, every moment becomes a new beginning. And so as the true healing really, really was underway, after I burned that list and turned to ashes, the very next morning in meditation, I had a conversation with Joy. That's source. They're very different from talking to Jesus. It just takes over and the teaching is profound. And I said, where have you been? And Joy said, I'm not just here when you write a book, because I wrote a whole book with Joy. It's coming out in June. It's called Always Connected. And Joy reminded me that that title is very appropriate for all of us. We are always connected to source. So what I would love if you take from this evening just the question, what parts of your story are not allowing you to live in the present? What parts of your childhood trauma or any trauma you've experienced are you still holding on to or may not even be aware of? What if you could do a life review now instead of waiting until you die? What would you see that needs to be healed? And the beautiful part is now that we've just rediscovered the hara, we can move our awareness here and honor our body, be centered in that belly, aligning the three dantians, the soul awareness centers, truly honor our body for the gift it gives us of experiencing life in its fullness, even with the pain, and then remain lucid, right? Don't fall back into the trap of believing your story is the only part of you. Lucid dreaming means being awake. Right. So did I forget anything here? 9:59 here. That's amazing. Well, I think I'll, okay. Nope. They're saying don't do Q&A. That's plenty. Yeah. Any questions you have, either take them to Grace at SuzanneGiesemann.com, your questions / your questions answered, or better yet, take them into meditation. Stillness is wonderful, but if there is sediment that's settled to the bottom, in the stillness, anything that gets stirred up, you're going to sense it. So ask Spirit, why is this bothering me? What do I need to know? I just flew cross country a few days ago. I'm back in South Carolina, and I was guided on the flight. Go back in your notes app on your iPad and go back through your notes. It was I rarely write the notes and I rarely go back and look at them. I went back to April, and for some reason, I had written a prayer. And I see now that that prayer came true. And so I would like my prayer, beautiful way to end this, to be your prayer. So why don't you close your eyes for a moment and pray with me? Spirit, I acknowledge your presence in me and as me, and I thank you for guiding me always. May I be free from fear. May I be free from compulsion. May I be blessed with love. May I be blessed with peace. And so it is. Very simple prayer. Freedom is the goal. It's one of the things Wolf came to teach us about. I'm going to end with our Pledge of Unity. Stephanie really liked this when I did it. I think I did it in the Forgotten Center workshop. Those of us in the United States grew up in our age saying the Pledge of Allegiance every day at the beginning of the school day. We'd all face the flag and say the Pledge of Allegiance. So this is Spirit's take that's universal, no matter where you live. I pledge allegiance to the one being beyond all stories and names. I am. And to the state of goodness for which it stands. One field, indivisible, with unconditional love for all. Love that. If you're new to the monthly connections, this was very different than normal. I usually share evidence for a half hour, and the latest teachings from Spirit. We pause regularly for Q&A. I do a healing session. I channel Sanaya. We'll get back to that in December. I actually have all of December's notes together already. Spirit's got me ready, but this was a special one. I truly hope it's been helpful for you, that it provided some ahas. If you felt uncomfortable, honor that, embrace that. Dig in, find out what that's all about. So grateful to be on this journey with all of you. Thank you for listening to my story. Parts of it were universal, so hopefully they'll help you in your healing path. Bless you all. I love you so much, and I'm grateful to be on this journey with you. Good night.